Hey everyone, I'm Grant Freer from Freer Therapeutics, licensed massage therapist, and this is Courtney Whitebay from Hudson Valley Peak Performance. We just did a talk today about fighting the flu and other immune invaders, how to keep yourself healthy and happy during this season of the creeping crud. One of the things we were talking about, Courtney has a wide variety of information in nutrition, and she was talking about foods to avoid and foods to consume more of during this season. Courtney?
Yeah, so it's really can be very basic. I'm not a nutritionist or dietitian. Both of us have great referral partners for that. But the nuts and bolts of it is that you want to eat as many whole foods as possible, as organic as possible to avoid any kind of toxic overload with pesticides and things like that. You also want to get a variety of colors, okay? Today we had some really fun peppers here, all different colors. And that's going to give you different micronutrients that your body is going to need to support itself through all of the seasons. And if you look at it, they're kind of like colors of the sun, which is really nice in these dark days of winter to have bright, colorful food. And the more colorful the flesh of the food is, the more nutrient dense it tends to be. So getting a variety of colors is a little bit difficult in the winter, fall, winter, and early spring months. But do the best that you can. Eating in season is awesome, and the winter is really, really hard. So if you're not a big canner or freezer or preserver, go with what looks best in your grocery store. Try to stay on the outside edges of it. Anything that's refrigerated is probably a good bet, or in the cool section where the fruits and vegetables are. So our baseline really should be a baseline of vegetables, and then really pairing on top of that. So making sure that for every meal, if you can, you get a good vegetable or two in, some fruit, and then you can add everything on top of that. So your meat, your dairy, your carbohydrate. Of course, there is carbohydrate in all of the other food groups as well, but I'm talking about like your grains, your breads, your pastas, different things like that. What you really want to try and do, though, paramount, number one, is stay away from any kind of processed sugary foods. That is going to depress your immune system sometimes by up to 50%, which is what you really want to avoid during the winter months. And when you think about it, it is almost kind of questionable as to whether this is flu season or it's just kind of like sugar season. Because if you think about it, when do we start getting sick in the fall? What's in the fall? Halloween. What do we eat Halloween? Buckets of candy, right? So is it really the cold air or stuff that gets stuck places? Yes and no. I mean, there's a variety of factors, but if you look at what you're putting in your body, you might find that a lot of this stuff is self-inflicted. So staying away from your candy, your processed foods, cheese and crackers. I love cheese and crackers, but trying to make sure that that's not your main meal, that your main meal is really circling around your nutrient-dense foods, your vegetables, your fruits, and then high quality proteins. So I highly, highly encourage you to look into any kind of locally sourced meat, eggs, cheese, milk, things like that. You're going to actually find that your products obviously are going to be better as long as it's a good farm. And a really interesting thing is that beef has omegas in it. Omegas are really great anti-inflammatories. They're great for heart health, brain health. Children really need to have them, and actually to develop their brains properly. It gives all the building blocks for that. But when you have factory farmed meat, your omega-3s and omega-6s are out of whack. So there's actually certain concentrations of omega-3s and 6s that you want to have in your diet and in your supplement regimen. And when you have them from free-range food, meat, they're really in great shape. But when you have them from factory farmed animals, they're flipped, which means that they have really high inflammatory processes in the meat itself, and then we consume it, and then that goes into our body. So the nutrients really are not there in the concentrations that they're supposed to be in, and that can create a bit of a problem. You might not notice it, sitting down to one meal, but over time, it is something that can wreak a little bit of havoc. That being said, a lot of our food unfortunately has had the nutrients bred out of it or bred down in favor of things like being juicier or being more colorful or being bigger. And that can actually lead to selective, I don't know, gene selection in a way of a hybridization. And you end up with food that's actually not as nutrient dense as it used to be maybe 50 years ago. So I also recommend a really targeted supplement regimen. For anybody who ever struggles with any kind of immune stuff in the winter, it's going to be really important to give your body those building blocks. So a whole food multivitamin, omega and DHA complex, and I love this one that I get that has a cellular vitality complex. And what that does is it gives your body the cellular building blocks to create cells that replicate properly, function properly, and die when they're supposed to, which is the whole life cycle. And sometimes when we're not getting the right building blocks from our food, that just can't happen. And we end up with things getting short-circuited. DNA doesn't replicate totally properly. Like there's a little chink in the chain there. So making sure that we have a good diet, lots and lots of water, targeted supplementation, and just as many whole foods as you possibly can is a really great way to make sure your body has the building blocks it needs to, 1, keep the inflammation reduced, 2, to keep your energy and mood up, and 3, to make sure that your immune system is really nice and strong.